long as you think positive, you can do it.
1987 Farmer Ifman two-wheel drive world champion from the United States, Joel Johnson. What car are you using to win the final today? I guess your ultimate.
Our world champion.
Our world championship, Matt Francis. Greg Hodap in the middle.
We have Ryan Dunbar.
All right. What an introduction. Happy Thursday to everybody. We're excited to be here to talk about the Vintage Clash of Champions, and we have some special guests tonight. My partner Drew of the D&D.
What's going on, guys?
We have Mr. Adam Rayls, and we have the man, the J in the JConcepts, Mr. Jason Ruona. What's up, fellas?
How we doing, guys?
How's it going? It's going to be a fun night of conversation here. I'm excited.
Yes, it is. I'm getting us posted up to some other groups. Jason, I know we said it in the backstage, but, thank you from the bottom of my and Drew's hearts for supporting this event. And means a lot, man. And we're really striving to do our very best to make this race fantastic. And, we want to make you proud and the rest of the vintage community proud. So we appreciate you, man, very, very much.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys doing what you're doing here because, as you know, and as you've seen, this is the kind of effort that has to go into promoting something like this, because otherwise nobody will know about it and nobody will be notified about what's special that's going on. And I think that, the effort and the time you guys are putting in is going to show, and it's already showing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Dirk, you're going to get us posted. So I'll just kind of kick things off for a little bit. Sounds good. I'll just kind of kick things off a little bit. I always love to talk about my kind of personal connection to our guests. I think it really kicks off. And this one's really a special night because, I've said this before on some other live casts, but I got into RC pretty late in 2016. So well beyond when a lot of these eras of racing that this event is going to cover happened. And, there was an Indianapolis track called JCP. I walked into it. I think I had a baby on my Bajorn on the front. I just really wanted to get into RC. I had always been kind of exposed to it young, but I never really was able to financially do it with my, my situation as a child. So, I wanted to walk into JCP and there was all these racers and I had a B4 World's car and I had no idea what I was doing. Brand new tires that I had never sanded, never sauced. And Adam Rayls was the very first person that approached me and gave me the time of day. Not many people would, talk to a guy with a baby on their chest and try to give him some tips and everything. And it was really awesome. And so right after that, JCP closed down, and the only other dirt track we had in Indiana was P&T Hobbies at the time. It was the second oldest track in the country, and it was Adam's, home track. He started racing there, I think, in the early 90s with his first B2. And we just became friends, and he supported everything that I was doing. And I knew there was a void, so I just kind of called up the owner, and I said, look, we need to put together a series to keep this racing going in the Midwest. Next thing you know, we had this series, and Adam was so supportive of that. And then the vintage race connection happened. And so honestly, I guess where I'm going with that is I don't know if I'd even be sitting in front of this screen talking to all you great people and to the vintage community if it wasn't for Adam Rayls. So Adam, thank you for that. And I appreciate everything you've done. And from Jason's standpoint, Jason, obviously, Adam, I was an AKA guy for many years by choice, and Adam finally just kept beating the horse and said, "You have got to switch over to the tires that I'm running." And so finally I did, and I've never looked back. So Jason, thank you for all you do for RC. Adam was the reason that I run your stuff by choice, and I support the hobby shops and buy all my product. And you to be the title sponsor was a no-brainer for all of us, and you've been so just awesome to just send an email to or send a message to and say, "What do you think about this?" And you respond. And so I'm excited for this conversation tonight, but I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Do your intro. I mean, Adam, you can talk a little bit more specifically, and then we can start organically having these great conversations tonight. Uh-oh, is Adam's mic off? Can't hear Adam now.
Uh-oh.
That's not good.
I didn't do it on purpose, Adam, I promise.
Can we hear you? Oh, no. His volume's not working.
There we go.
There we go. There you go. Now we hear you. Now we hear you. Yeah, now we're good. Now we're good.
All
right. Go ahead. Well, hopefully you heard everything I said. So go ahead and talk about your history and everything.
Oh, sure. Well, after you talked, just goes to show you never know who you're going to meet at what time in this hobby and where your friendships are going to go. Just walking in and, you as a greenhorn, fresh, not knowing anything, way back in those days. And hell, I'd been in this hobby, 2016, over 20 some years at that point.
Yeah. And you're always one of the first people to, embrace anybody. You'll build cars for people. You'll throw your elbows in and wrench. And that's one of the staples of Adam Rayls that everybody in this state I know loves and respects you for, not including how fast you can be all the time anyway. So, but talk about your start. I know I mentioned it back in the early 90s with the B2. I know that's your love and your passion. Talk about that and where you got your start. Want to know.
Man, the start was Christmas '92. Tamiya Super Blackfoot. That was the first hobby grade vehicle besides, the obvious Tyco Bandits and whatever, Nyko, this and that. Dad got me hooked up with that, a Futaba Magnum Junior Sport, mechanical speed control. Oh, that I think I threw away right away, and I had some like the Futaba control in the radio. A little combo action. Ran that, ran it up, down the street, this, that, the other, until there was one track in Kokomo called Kokomo Hobby. They had moved locations, had an outdoor off-road, real small. I went and I ran that once in just like the open or novice, whatever it was, sportsman class. I couldn't even tell you if I won. Maybe I did. And then after that, they closed, and Elliott's RC in Kokomo opened, dirt oval. Then I started running the same Tamiya Super Blackfoot on the oval until me and Dad picked up a Traxxas Rad 2 out of some random toy store that was super safe.
Yeah.
Of course, I talked my dad into buying it. We need another RC car right now. We get that. And I run that the next year in the point series for novice, win the point series. I give that. Then my dad took over that car, I think, the next season and won the same novice point series the very next year with the same Traxxas. As that year, was that 93, the 94-ish? 94, I got a Traxxas SRT. That stadium truck was legit. Like, that was Traxxas's best, and actually probably their last actual race release, if I remember right.
Wow.
Yeah, that was an awesome truck. And then after that, Dad bought me I think it was the next Christmas, the T2. I think that was 95. Maybe Christmas 95, I think, yeah. T2, first associated kit, fell in love. Racing that every single weekend. Race it Saturday night, wake up Sunday, tear the whole thing apart, wrench on it, get it ready for next weekend already. All through the 90s. Then I bought First Money B2. Actual, like, worked for my own money, had it, told Dad, you better call up Stormer Hobbies right now and order me a beat.
There we go. I love that.
Right there. He's like, I bought the car and he provided electronics, and I was off.
Did you say Stormer Hobbies?
Absolutely.
So you want to know here's something crazy? Bob's been reaching out to me all day, and he's actually coming to the race.
No way.
Yeah, he is coming, and he'll probably bring 100 cars, how many ever he can get in the hull of an airplane. But it's pretty awesome to have him coming. So I got to have a call with him this weekend to help him get whatever he's bringing ready. So yeah, that's going to be fun in itself. But having him there is going to be super cool.
That's a cool connection there. That's awesome.
I used to cherry pick the Stormer website years ago when I was hunting for all these brand new parts to build a B2 and a T2 and the B3 T3. I would scavenger right through it all and find anything I could and order it from then. He had so much stuff, be like just one left, this, that, or the other, that I bought here and there over the years, and they're on the cars I'm running. That's for sure.
Yeah.
He told me today he probably has one of each car that has come out with electronics and like the charger from around the same time. So I would like to have like a battle op between his and Kirby's collection.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby's collection it's like he keeps opening these different doors. I think he videos me, and I'm just more and more baffled by how he's able to pull what he has off. I mean, he sent me some pictures today, some B2s and some XXs that he had in the corner, and they'd have dust on them, but they're brand new cars. I'm like, Kirby, I don't know how you do it, man. I don't know how you do it. But Adam, I love all those stories. What kind of tires were you rocking out back in that era? Do you recall what your first set of tires kind of was? Were they rips or ribs or whatever?
We were running dirt oval. It was specific. We took foams and we put silicone on them, and because it was like a clay wet dirt oval, like no dust, it was ripping. But the first time I ran outdoor off-road, fell in love. I run it with the Super Blackfoot, and then I took the SRT to some one-off trophy race at a fairgrounds, several towns north of where I was living. And one of those, everybody shows up for one day, sets up their pits, and, outdoor race. And I was probably, without a doubt, it had to be Proline, the edge front. Had to be. If not, it was that tire right before it, whatever their truck front tire was, right edge. And definitely like the stubby. Maybe.
So yeah, that's amazing. So let me ask you a question. So obviously, I've heard a lot of stories. Like even Jason Grimes would say that he used to take magnifying glasses to the RC car magazines to try to figure out where Masami had his hole in the arm on the rear shock or the front shock or whatever, and the camera links. That's how you guys got your setup sheets back then, right? So you grew up in right around that era where Jason was starting to, really hit it hard in the 95, 97 worlds. And so I'm sure you're seeing these magazine articles come out around that time and you're looking at them. I mean, back then, like what was your thoughts on just seeing Jason's name in the magazine? Was that like a kind of just something that you saw the name, matched up with all the other guys, or was it kind of a different, appeal back then? I'm just curious because I'm asking because I have no idea.
Well, what you would do back in the day, if you're the average Joe's, you lived and breathed for whenever car action would come out.
Yes.
Get a peek at, the worlds that was 8 months ago or whatever, how long it took to get to the actual printed magazine. And you're just combing over it, what are they doing here? What are they doing? You can tell they cut this off here, or, just little tips and little things. Sometimes they would print the setup on the side of the fold out or whatever car action had. And you could go by that, but man, you had to really look at the card and get the little details. And, I would see Ruona in there, and obviously his name in the results, whether you're opening up a Cactus Classic or as the Winter Champs or, what have you. The Roarnats, obviously the Worlds, that was the biggest. Whenever that car action was putting out the Worlds, coverage, boom, had to have that one right away. Couldn't wait to get to Dad's house when that came.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. I know I have Robert Stevens has the December 1997 magazine, which was basically the World's coverage from that year. He found a separate copy that he has actually given to me, so I'm actually going to have that iconic magazine. I think that's, in my opinion, that's probably, you know, the most iconic magazine published year and month that's ever came out with just the coverage of that. And so, you know, as we transition that, Jason, we want to hear your story now. Like, I want to hear it. I mean, the world wants to hear it. I don't know it, so let's hear it.
I mean, you can go as far back as, you know, I guess the mid '80s. I wanted RC cars. When you seen them, you know, in the store and everything. But what really kind of got me motivated is I really loved monster trucks. When I was a kid, I loved Bigfoot, and when when I first started seeing, you know, these magazines like we talked about, they were a huge influence. And, you know, you started kind of there. You kind of started dreaming up all the things that you wanted when you saw in the magazine. And I think for me, you just wanted to start anywhere. You know, I had the Radio Shack stuff. I had the stuff that you could get, you know, at department stores. And, you know, that stuff was, you know, you run it a couple times and throw it away because you couldn't rebuild it. You couldn't fix it. So, you know, you start to get into the hobby grade stuff. You know, I had a few different cars when I started. You know, I built some stuff with my dad. But the first few that we had, I didn't have the greatest experience. The first couple cars, maybe it's just I was a little too young, and my dad, he really didn't like the smaller stuff. You know, for him, there was like the RC stuff was really frustrating because everything is so small. But that was the part I liked about it. I liked the part that it was small to me. So once we kind of got through some of the growing pains.
We lose Jason there.
Well, he's here.
There we go.
Yeah. So once we got through the growing pains, I think the first vehicle that I guess got me really hooked was the Midnight Pumpkin and the Lunchbox, which was kind of the same vehicle with a different body. I love those. And as soon as, you know, it was just in the summer, you would just, you know, charge batteries, go out and play. Then, you know, watch TV, wrench on your car, you know, charge again, go out and play. Then video games, you know, Nintendo. The first Nintendo was the thing. And
So what was your favorite game on Nintendo, Jason?
honestly, I think just the straight up Mario Brothers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know it. Yeah, I think that was the best one. But yeah, eventually I talked my parents into getting a Clodbuster, which is the one I really wanted. And because it had the monster truck look, and it was a monster truck, and I got that, and I just fell in love with kind of working on it. And for a while, you were happy with the way it was as a regular vehicle, and then I started modifying it, and I was probably, I don't know, 12 years old or something, and 13, and then you start modifying it, changing it, making stuff, and kind of went from there. And I remember, you know, going to the hobby store all the time and getting parts for it, and you know, I'd break stuff and have to fix it, and so I made tracks in my backyard. And you know, what's weird is I had all these magazines, but I never looked at the actual racing coverage. I never looked at. I mean, I knew it was there, but you know, we're talking, you know, in the '80s still. But you know, I knew the RC10 was there, but I was really attracted to all the other stuff, and I would just play in the backyard. I made tracks before I really knew what a track looked like. You know, I'd make different jumps. You know, I made stuff that I just thought would be neat. And finally, I went to the hobby store once, and they're just like, you know, why do you spend all this time on this RC10 or on this Clodbuster? And you know, why don't you go race? And I'm like, well, I don't really know what you're talking about. So they gave me kind of the ins and outs that you could go race. And so I got out there. I think I went and looked. I think I went and watched, and I just couldn't believe what was going on. And of course, they were all different vehicles than I had. First I was like, well, can I race my Clodbuster? Like, well, no, we don't really race Clodbuster. Okay. So I got a JRXT, was my first real racing RC car. And when I built it, I got Adam said he had the Futaba Sport. I had one of those for my Clodbuster. I don't remember if I used that for my JRXT or I got a Magnum Junior. But it was the newer looking one, not the one that was a little bit the generation before that, the more square looking
Magnum Senior, maybe.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
The swivel head, Jason.
Yeah, I didn't have that, but
Yeah.
I had the Sport and the Junior after that.
Yeah.
Isn't there like a really infamous photo of Jason with like Jay Halsey or something holding one of those trucks or something?
Yep.
Yeah. So well, we can kind of get to that, but what ended up happening is I built this truck and I went out on my driveway and I drove it and I was just like, this thing just blows away anything that I've ever driven with an RC car. It was absolutely amazing. And I couldn't believe I used to build jumps and just try to jump as far as I could. And I put it through my test, right? I had my own testing ground. And I was like, after that, I was obsessed with the racing side of it. I put the Clodbuster aside, even though, I was wrenching and loved that thing for years, but pretty soon then it was all about the RC or the JRXT, and then the hobby store, which was Central Florida Hobbies by me. He offered to let me drive one of his RC10s, so that was kind of the start of it for me. I ran the JRXT and stock truck, and then I got a RC10 that the hobby store let me drive for them as a two-wheel drive buggy. And at first I really didn't like two-wheel drive buggy. I just felt like the thing was really narrow. It was kind of a lot harder to drive. All of our tracks back then were a lot more difficult in terms of the obstacles we had back then were a lot different than today. We had all these step downs and mogul sections and things that people thought were neat back then. They put on these tracks, and buggies really struggled on those type of things. Unless once you had the savvy and the race knowledge to navigate it. But me coming from my backyard with the Clodbuster, then the JRXT, then the buggy, it was a little bit of a struggle initially. But with the JRXT, it was like perfect for me. The first time I went and raced, I ran the novice class, and they got mad at me because they thought that I had raced before. They're like, what? They're like, they were trying to kick me out of novice because I was lapping everybody. And and I'm like, no, I didn't even know what a transponder was. They drilled my body. They put a transponder in my truck. I'm like, I didn't even know how to charge my battery all the way. I was just out there driving, and I just had a lot of experience already. So to me, the actual driving was pretty natural at the point because I had a ton of experience in my backyard and driving for so long that I could hit windows, I could hit lines, I could drive where I wanted to put it fairly easily. And so, it took me a little while, and I, probably after the second weekend, they kicked me out of novice. I ran stock truck, competed in a series. We talked on another podcast the other night how series were so big. Club series, really got me invested in racing every week. And I raced in a stock truck point series, a stock buggy. And then once that series was over, I think I went to modified truck, and then I stayed in stock buggy because the guy from Central Florida Hobbies, his name is Glenn Harkey. He got me in the Winter Champs for the 91 Winter Champs. So I was there, and I remember driving in Lake Park with my mom. And back then we had these, they had lines for frequencies. It
was on 87.
So what they did is for every frequency on the board, the club routine was they had a clip, right? They put a clothes hanger pin for each frequency on the board. So when you would go up to practice, if your clip was there, you could take that, put it on your radio, and then you go up and run, and that's how you knew who was on which frequency. So for the Winter Champs, I showed up and they had a line for every frequency. That there was probably 7 or 8 people deep for all of 75 band, all of 27 band. There was a line. So it was, we drove in and I just saw these lines and just people everywhere and all these tents, and it was really intimidating. Honestly, if it wasn't for my mom, I probably would have left, because I was just like, this is like way over my head. At that point, I think I started in October and the Winter Champs was in February. So it was like, I went from my first race in October to the Winter Champs in February. And it's like, I don't know, it's like going to a rock concert. It's like going to Metallica when you've only seen your buddies, go and, play in their garage or something. But yeah, so, my mom basically convinced me to just tough it out, stay there and try, get practice. And the guy from the hobby store, Glenn Harkey, he set up the pits at that point for Team Associated. So he set up the pits there for them because he knew Cliff Lett, he knew Jay Halsey. Cliff Lett was actually dating his daughter at the time. So they were, in terms of knowing what was going on, Glenn always knew what was going on because he was somewhat close with Cliff. And so he'd set up the pits for Associated, and all those photos that you see that when the RC10T came out, or on the re-release here, there are photos from that pit area where Curtis and Mike Reedy are sitting at the little picnic table things we had, and that was our pit area. And I was right behind there. One of the pictures you can see that I think it's on the kit box or it was in the thing. You can see me and my mom behind there, just in the pits. Brian Kinwald was right next to me on a little fold-out table, and Cliff Lett was on the other side on the same little, those tables we used to use, the blue ones. I'm sure Adam and Dirk probably had those, the little picnic tables, which it folded into. So you folded it out, so we use those all the time, but those guys would use them coming in for Winter Champs. And my
all-time favorite track, by the way, Jason.
Lake
Park, where I have my best memories.
Yeah. So when we did that, I'm just sitting there. I only got into two-wheel buggy, so I was in two-wheel stock. Glenn got me in because it's a 400 entry capped race back then, and he got me in because he knew the club. And so I'm sitting there, and Kinwald's right next to me, and Cliff's on the other side of the table. And, Cliff brings out the RC10T, right? Boom. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is this? It's the new Associated truck. And so I was in love from the moment he sat it out on the table. And Kinwald didn't run truck there. He ran two-wheel and I think four-wheel, which would have been, it would completely change history if Kinwald had ran truck there, right? Because there'd be pictures of his truck.
Yes.
But so, it ended up being Cliff, Curtis, and Butch Klober were the 3 RC10Ts. But yeah, Kinwald was actually there racing for Associated, and he looked awesome on the track. But that was the whole one qualifier. Track was fast during one round. You had to make it. So anyway, that was my first big race experience. Yep, that's the kit box, and right behind, in between Reedy and Butch Klober, that's my mom in the white, and then I have the fluorescent color hat on. So you can see right behind Butch's head, that's where Kinwald was pitting, and then on the other side of that table was where Cliff was pitting. So so you see these trucks, and anyway, I fell in love with that truck, had to have one. We ordered it. But anyway, progressed through. Eventually the next year, 1992, I got on the associated team, and we did a race called the Georgia State Championships. It was a big event, and that's kind of where after that event I got sponsored by Associated, and actually Paul Wynn's dad had a motor company, Redline Modifieds, and so I raced Associated and at Redline Motors, and just had a great beginning. And during that Winter Champs, I guess sort of the lost fact of that whole race with the RC10T is they didn't TQ the race. Jay Halsey TQ'd the race with the JRXT. And I remember being there because they ran the narrow front tires on the RC10T. And so I remember, Gil Jr. and Jay, they are all trying to make narrow front tires for, there was qualifier that they ran, I think, with narrow front tires. They just made them out of their own tires, and then they took a wheel and narrowed it. And, but Jay actually ran the wide fronts, I think, when he TQ'd. So that's what he ran in the main, was the wide fronts. But
were the narrows outlawed after that race?
It was after that.
Right.
Yeah, it was after that race. Roar essentially banned the narrow fronts and just kind of said you needed to run wide fronts, wide tires, front and rear. So I think, to be honest, I don't know that the narrow front tires were better.
No,
they were probably, the wide ones were probably better, but just the whole idea that it actually gave that truck a look that sold it was that narrow front tire, the body that was lowered over the shock towers. That's what sold that truck to me. And then seeing it in person, of course. And Cliff won the main. He qualified third. They ran us, they gridded you 3-2-3. Is it 3-2-3-2? Is that what it is?
Rough.
So that was how they gridded you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the Associated video online. They show the start, but Cliff qualified third, and he just drove around the first two guys. The Jay Halsey was on the pole on the inside with the JRXT, and Cliff was third, and basically just drove around that sweeper, and he was in the lead, and the race was over. And
wow,
I'm sure it was 4 minutes then. It wasn't 5 at that point, and it was a rather easy main, except for the track was super blue groove before we knew what blue groove was. It was blue grooved, and Cliff had Proline had their new tires there, the 90s, which were for truck. They called the buggy ones it was the part number 7080, I believe, and 7090, I think, were the two part numbers for that. So Cliff had those on the rear, and Jay was running X patterns. So that was a big difference in tire between the 90s and the X patterns, but they both made them work. Obviously Jay TQ'd, Cliff won the main there, but and that was kind of my love affair of RC. Really just kind of got ignited with that event, just that there was this whole other level, this whole this sort of this team camaraderie, and the pitting, the outdoor Lake Park Winter Champs track was unbelievable. And then to top it off, at the end of the race, Losi made an announcement. I think Pops Losi, he would always come to the race. So Pops was there because it was the Team Losi Winter Championships. It was sponsored by Team Losi. So they would come with everybody. They had everybody there, and Pops was there. And I believe he would always go up and try to give something away. And that year they gave away Jay's JRXT, and I was the one that they pulled to win the JRXT. So that's where the picture comes from, is when I won the truck. And what's weird is I think that's what did it for me. Just having such a great experience at that event, similar to maybe Drew having a great experience with Adam. It wasn't so much that I had a great experience necessarily one-on-one with anybody there, but it was more of like this whole other world that you got opened up to. And, you know, I kind of got a little bit of an inside look being in the pits that I was in. The RC10T was absolutely so amazingly cool. And Cliff winning the main and then winning Jay's truck on top of it. Actually, I changed my paint job for a while to what Jay's was, because I continued running the JRXT after that race until the RC10T came out. And so I actually raced with Jay Halsey's paint job until the RC10T came out. So I had my own.
That is awesome.
I had my own truck.
Wow.
With and I just used the Jay Halsey paint job for a while, but I kept his truck, and I never used the body or anything. But that race was epic. I really wish the guys these days, the Spencers and the Mayfields and the Cavaliers who, I've been close with over the years. I wish they could have experienced that race, because I try to explain it to them, and they just kind of, they've run so many big races already and won the worlds, but they never experienced that race. And I think anybody that experienced that race, it felt, and I did the worlds a few years later, but it was the worlds when there wasn't a worlds that year. Yeah. So because, we got the Masamis, we got, I know Craig Drescher had been there. Obviously, Jurgen would always come from LRP. And so there was a big Schumacher presence. There was a big Associated. Obviously, the Team Losi was stacked as well. And Kyosho had drivers there. So it was an international event. So it was huge. And they turned entries away. You could only sign up through the magazine back then. And they would get 1,000 entries mailed to them.
Yeah.
So they would get 1,000 entries mailed, and they would have to turn back 600 of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what you had to do back then is you take the ad out of the magazine, because that's where they put it in there. You fill it out, you send a check with the entry form to the track, and then the way you knew if you got in the race or not is if you got the check back. So that's how you knew if you got in the race or not. So they would turn away 600 entries because they'd only take 400. And so anyway, that's what kind of got me really going. It was the 1992, I got sponsored by Associated and a Red Line. Eventually by 93, I was running Reedy. And that's when I kind of got my paint job of my own. In 93, I got Mark Loop, who actually painted for Cliff and Jay Halsey, JD Beckwith. I met him at the Winter Champs, and I got him to paint bodies for me. And that's kind of where I ended up with where I'm at today. And by 1994, Gene was at the Winter Champs in 94. Gene actually pulled me aside and said he was going to put me on the travel team. And so it was Gene Husting was, the part owner with Roger Curtis. That was the two owners of Associated. Today we have Curtis, who will be at the vintage race.
Yeah.
That's his son, Curtis's son. He has another son, Steve. And there's a third son as well. I can't remember his name right now. Maybe it's Brian. It might be Brian.
I believe it is Brian.
And then, so there's 3 brothers, and then his sister, Julie, who also worked at Associated. But anyway, and then Midge was his wife. So, and their mom. So, Gene told me he's going to put me on the travel team in 1994. And that's kind of where my pro racing started, I guess.
It's crazy, Jason, because we literally, kind of grew up in the same areas, and I left Florida in '89 after the Winter Champs, and never really looked back. But it's just crazy. I wish I would have been there a few more years. You know what I mean? Because it'd have been cool.
Oh yeah. Well, I know Paul ran the '89 Winter Champs. He was there. Paul Wynn ran that, and I had a friend of mine. His name is Jim Myers, and
Yes.
he's a painter. And he came down from New York to run the Winter Champs, and I think he did the '89 Winter Champs. It's when Masami was there, I believe.
Yep.
Wow.
And I saw his home videos that he took from that race, because back then, he brought his video camera. So if he was racing, he'd have somebody video him, and then when he wasn't racing, he was just around in the pits and taking video of Masami, and it was absolutely hilarious to watch that video of him kind of commenting on what he was seeing, because he came, it's like anybody, it's like me coming in and you go to this big show, right? And you're just like, all of a sudden there's Masami and he's racing and in his video, because he's just completely like just talking normal in the video. So it's like he's just following Masami with the shaky camera right around the track, and which was great. Like, I mean, if you had that today, it would just be so gold.
Do you still have it, Jason, or no? Is it gone?
No, that was Jim's video.
Okay.
And I don't know if he still has it or not. It would be gold if he did.
Oh my goodness, that would be so amazing.
It would be gold. The closest thing I've seen, I mean, there's other ones, but I noticed there's a guy named Mike the Painter, is what everybody called him in the 90s.
Do you remember Mike the Painter, Skull Racing?
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah, did the patch and the
yep.
Yeah, the Skull Racing were Dunbar and Halsey, and those guys were freaking nuts, man.
Well, he put up a home video like that on YouTube.
Yeah.
There is one, and that's what reminded me when I watched his. It really reminded me of it. So, yeah, I mean, that's where everything kind of started for me, I guess. I mean, we can keep moving along. I don't know if you guys want to, how much, more you want to go, but that's the beginning for me.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I want to kind of know, and I know you and I have sat down across probably that same desk and kind of talked about the history of JConcepts, and I think it'd be good for people to kind of know how you ended up there, and everybody wants to know about the BJ4, and I would love it if you want to go a little more into that, and we can take some time to talk about the race and the sponsors and different things after that if you want. Tires.
Yeah.
I know tires.
Talk about when this thing was created, right?
Well, it's a big lead up really over the years, because we're talking about, kind of when I was racing was 94, and when I was got on the travel team, then I got close with Ken Wald and Pavitas and Cliff Lett and Jay Halsey. These guys were very good to me over the years, and JD Beckwith and Mike Reedy. All these guys were very, very good to me because I was the kid that didn't want to talk much. So like I just sat there and listened, and I was so much just watching Brian, as many people did. Obviously, I told that story about the Winter Champs where he was pitting next to me. And I mean, you just watch these guys and see what they did. And he wasn't even like Brian Kinwald at that point. Right. He was just some kid associated brought from California. Like most people didn't know who it was. Like, but obviously when you're paying attention and you're right there, you figure out right away. You're like, oh, and JD Beckwith was there too. He actually won buggy at that same race. So they had a really amazing team at that point, but these guys were all really good to me in all their own ways. And so in 1995, there was the Worlds was going to be in Japan for and that was where the B2 was going to debut, was the 95 Worlds. So Mike Reedy invited me to come live with him in the summer of 95. So I went out there in the summer of 95. I stayed with Mike Reedy, and
wow.
Just the most chill situation. He was the guy that was just like, he's like, yeah, if you want to go somewhere, just take my car. You want to go race, go to the beach, take my car, whatever, that's fine. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I was 17, maybe. I don't know, 17. And yeah, he's just like, yeah, if you want to go, just take my car and come to work with me. So what I did is I worked at Associated in the summer of '95. So they had a full Reedy motor department. They had the Associated, um, all the car packaging was all in house there. And I don't know if I can really describe how amazing that Associated was to me at that particular time, because you walked in the front doors. It's the one that's in the video, where Roger's holding the RC10 and he's talking about the RC10. Well, there's the stairs there. You go into the front door. They had the display cabinets. Well, anyway, you go in there. There was Midge's office, and then Cliff's office, and then Mike Reedy's office was down the left. And then on the right, they had like a little IT room, which Roger was always in there. And then there was a customer service area where the guy answered the phone. And then there was Pete Cooney, who was the guy that had worked there longer than any of those guys. He was like the purchasing guy. So, he was the guy that said, hey, we need, 10,000 axles. They would order 10,000 axles, right? Like that was, so then you go past there, you go into the warehouse areas where all the packaging was going on. So there's probably 20 people out there packaging cars and kits. And so just kind of realizing like, oh, okay, I see how they're packaging this now. Like, I get it. Like all these kit bags kind of going together. And then you see the motor department, which was, they wound the motors there, and you would do the soldering. They would do all the soldering. They would, there's like a weld part on top of the, where the wiring came together. You close that part up and then you put a weld on top. So they did all these things. They did the balancing there. They did the kind of the initial run up of the motors and the little test. And so that was the Reedy section, which was quite big. And then the packaging too. So they had to do the packaging as well. Then they had the warehouse where the bulk items were, and then back to the machine area where Curtis was, where all the machine shop stuff was. And I think, you go back to, they did some gluing of tires back there for the on-road cars. They would glue the foam tires on the wheels. And then, then you'd go over on Gene's side. Gene's office was on the other side, along with Roger's, who Gene's office was the exact opposite of Roger's. Gene's office was really kind of like, he just had everyone's cars. He had the Masami cars in there, the 91, the 89. He had the Jay Halsey cars. He had the Deadpool RC10. He had all that stuff in there. And so in a lot of pictures, a lot of great stuff from Gene's office. Anytime they won a Worlds and they wanted to give him the car, he gave him back. So, and then you get to Roger's office, which was the opposite. Like I would like look in there and I'd be like, what's going on? It looked like it was a disaster. Like there was so much stuff everywhere. Like I just remember seeing like his chair would always hit the wall, right? And there was all these like big dents and scrapes on the wall. And I'm like, this is driving me crazy. And and
I think it did Curtis too, because his office is like meticulous.
Well, yeah, Curtis's office, he was right by the machine shop. So he probably, I would say, of all the guys, he probably had one of the most important positions, but probably the least fancy office, because it was more of like practical, right? It was he had to get dirty. Whereas Roger was like the disaster area to me. It looked like he was a mad scientist kind of guy, which he was. So you kind of, to me, I'd see this stuff and I was like, this is the guy that designed the RC10. He's obviously, he's concentrating on the item he's thinking about and working on. He's not concerned about, how neat everything is. And I always thought that was really kind of special. Just seeing people's different personalities, but yeah, so I got to go there. I saw that. That was my walkthrough, and being at Associated, I'd go every day with Reedy. He'd get there at like, 6 a.m. or something. So I'd have to get up and just zombie my way into work with Mike, and I worked in the Reedy department. That's where I met Scott Hughes was there. Mark Pavita. Well, I already knew all these guys, but Scott Hughes worked in the Reedy department, and Mark Pavitas worked in the Reedy department. So I kind of worked, I wouldn't say with those guys, but they were around. And so I knew them at the track and the races, but I also got to know them there. And then, so I would work in Cliff's office. My job was to help build all the B2s for the Worlds in 95. So
Wow.
as all the
Adam just got a little perk up over there.
It is.
so as all these, they just started designing cars with the T2 and the B2 on the computer. As these cars the molds were being finished, they would get new parts in. And so it got to the point where we had to figure out, okay, how many cars we're going to be building for the Worlds in Japan, and how many drivers are going to be there that are associated. Because obviously, we at that point, maybe email had just started, but most of all the communication was still by fax.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I think that what was going on was a lot of the communication, because we would get faxes from Masami that would come through. And so we ended up, so every day, Gene would come in with a fax from Masami or something and say, hey, we just got this information from Masami. So what we did is we built these cars, and first of all, we built one for Mark had the first one, and I'm sure me and Masami probably had the second and the third one. Because I was in the office, so Mark and I had cars. We would go to SoCal after noon, after lunch. We would go to SoCal, and we would run the B2 and see what kind of problems we were going to have heading into the Worlds in Japan, and so that we could begin saying, okay, are we ready to go? Is there some problems or issues, or because I think we had to build 27 cars. It was something like that. I want to say there was 25 in the Worlds that we needed to have cars for, and then we built two others that were for, I want to say one was Paul Wynn and the other one was Brett and Brad Relfs got one, I think, to share. So we built something, I want to say 27 cars was what I kind of remember. And so I built all these cars, and the first B2 had a stealth transmission in it. It didn't, the case and all the internals was a regular stealth transmission. And there was a special brace that they had to make that went on top that bolted the rear bulkhead to the transmission that never, the production car, that was all designed differently because it had a different brace and everything. So the bottom plate was different on those Worlds cars. So it was, I would say, maybe 80% of the car was production at that race. And then there was the transmission parts and some things that was finalized after. But yeah, we built all those cars, or I built all those cars, and annoying Cliff every day. Because I worked in, because during all this, right, like Kinwald used to work in Cliff's office. And when Kinwald went to Losi, he wasn't there anymore. So I was actually kind of like, I'm not going to say taking the place of Kinwald, but I was like wrenching in the same area. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kinwald was still there, if he would have been building the cars.
Yeah. Wow.
But
So Jason, just to intersect real quick, Jeff, we announced today that Matt Ledger is going to be a legend at our race. He's really excited. He actually is bringing what he called a prototype B2 from the 1995 Worlds. Is that a car that you had your hands on at some point right there?
Yeah, I probably built the car when we shipped it to him.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, because I built all the cars, and I want to whatever the amount of shocks were, I built like 100
Wow.
shocks or something like that. So I was annoying Cliff every day with building these cars and shocks because you make the noise with the shocks and all that. So it's like somebody's over here trying to concentrate and you're making all these noises with the shocks and stuff. So
Love it.
So and Cliff is like a nice guy, but he's also the guy that won't mind telling you that you're being annoying. So it's like you're trying not to like get him annoyed, but you're also like, hey, this is how I build my shocks, right? But anyway, I remember you just do so many, and then you send the cars out, and then like Matt Francis gets his, and he's like, oh yeah, I redid all the shocks. Because they suck. I'm like, yeah, that must have been at the end when I was tired of building them. But yeah, I remember Cliff had me check all the springs, and see if the springs they had a machine to check the rate of all the springs and wanted to make sure they were in a certain tolerance. So all the cars that we sent to these guys had the springs were checked or within a certain rate for all the guys, and of course everybody gets their cars, and I'm sure they rebuilt them, which was fine. But I think the biggest thing is they wanted to make sure that they were together, and then they didn't have to have like an instruction or
Right. Yeah.
So
Adam's rocking out that B2 shirt right there, right?
Yeah, that came out after.
Yeah. So Adam, I mean, I just have a question because we're on the B2 topic. I mean, obviously Adam has raced at all these different vintage races that I've been a part of over the past 5 or 6 years. And I remember him having an interview with Jason where you guys were kind of at an INS race talking about how that was going really well. And I mean, Adam, I don't want to intersect, but I mean, do you want to talk about your B2 and just kind of like that transition of how these vintage races locally have developed into this one? Because I think you have a really good sense of how that's all played out, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, when you came along and we were doing the winter series there at PNT, and then eventually that it morphed into you doing some actual vintage races, and I think everyone grew and got bigger, right, each year.
Yeah, we had Dunbar come in 18. That was kind of what started this whole like buildup of like, what do we got to do bigger the next time, right?
Right. And I mean, we had a lot of good response. I mean, we were at a good hobby shop for it. PNT being open was fun, and he still had parts on the wall for most cars.
He did.
Crazy. We had some good races. And, I mean, I think the first, other than going there, the club race, just to practice with them after I built the B2 and the T2 at PNT is what got me ready for the vintage Nats in 2017.
Yeah.
And basically, and then I showed up and changed everything that I had worked on at PNT once I got there. What was it? RC Excitement out east.
Yeah. I mean, I remember where after we first met, I started getting on Facebook trying to understand like who was cool, who wasn't. What was I trying to, I was trying to figure it all out. And I remember right after we had met, there was a picture of you that was flying back from the Vintage Nationals or the Bot Nats at that race. And I can't remember exactly where the race was that year. Maybe it was in Massachusetts, but I can't recall.
It was
yeah. And you were flying back and there was that iconic photo of you cheesing with the T2 and the B2. And then all of a sudden your setups got posted, which we're still using basically a version of that setup to this day that I even posted the other day to get people prepared for the event ahead of time. And it's talk about how that setup is, working still and how it's translated to Hoosier. Because I think people are asking these comments, like everyone's like got this question of like the evolution of vintage racing. And I like to hear Jason's comments on it too. But Adam, speak upon like what you're feeling on these cars and how they're reacting to this track at Hoosier that we're going to have this race on.
Well, I think initially, like most of the races we were running treads everywhere, the type of tracks we were running on. And so at, PNT, obviously we're running dirt webs for those years. And then that's the green dirt webs, what I ran out at RC Excitement. And then let's see, I ran a couple times at Hoosier with it. And what's strange is, well, the cars are so much lighter than we ran them then, like way, way lighter. And I'm not going to go put 10, 12 ounces back in the car to run them just as they were.
Right.
But what was amazing was once the tires were broken, and even before they weren't, I mean, Hoosiers got good enough grip that I was pleasantly surprised with some older tires that the cars drove really well. Had plenty of steering, tons of rear grip. You could obviously wheelie if you had any more power than you really needed at Hoosier.
Right.
It's actually very simple. I mean, I think what's going to be awesome for a lot of people is we want to get the vintage cars on the track, but you don't want to sit there and chase everything with these older cars that not a lot of people get to race on a weekly basis or at all, once or twice a year. You don't want to walk in and be like, all right, so I have to buy what tires, when, break them in, what compound are we running, what are we doing with it? You can show up to Hoosier with some JConcepts Smoothie 2, sauce them, and just start running.
Yep.
And it's literally that simple. I'm not, we're not using any other foams. I think at the most I'm going to glue sidewalls, maybe on 4-wheel.
Yeah.
Maybe a little touchy. But with the trucks and buggies, not worried at all. I think everybody will have a good experience with the traction level. I know Eddie doesn't have to go crazy on glue like we do for maybe the Clash or the INS series.
Mhm.
But I think everybody will be surprised with the drivability and be able to get their cars around the track no matter what you have with just simply buying one set of tires and probably just running them.
Yeah. I mean, I had such a blast a couple weeks ago with the Hoosier. I was wheeling the Francis prototype car, so to speak. You were running your B3 that you're going to be ready to go. Then we swapped remotes, and you felt that car out versus mine, and we exchanged notes, and we're just continuing to evolve what that Francis setup is and what your setup's going to be. But at the end of the day, we were just smiling the whole time that we're running those cars, because that's what this race is about. It's about fun and bringing back great memories. And even Dunbar talks about how he just smiles every time he runs his low CXX because it brings him back to all the stories that Jason has talked about tonight. And that's so much about what this race is. And you talked about your 4-wheel drive. Dirk, I sent a picture of Adam's BJ4. I know there's a lot of people that have been posting. I think Al Horn is like seriously thinking about breaking out his BJ4 as well, that he dusted off in the basement.
Oh, we
Adam,
have
talk
to.
about the BJ4, maybe what it means to you, and then we can transition back to Jason for a moment about, I guess a quick 101 of how that car developed. But I want to hear it from you first.
All right. Well, I think anybody that was around in the 2003 era, and if you were an Associated fan or anybody in saw the pictures of BJ4 at the Worlds that year, and you were just like, oh man, because at the time you had no selection. Yokomo wasn't really supporting a car. They had one, I think it was the MR4 BC at the time.
Okay.
They had that, and you had the Losi XX4, which would crush everybody. Then they were actually, I think by then they had the Triple X4, is what a lot of guys were running at that race. I think Jason was at the Triple X4 in 03.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you still couldn't touch the Double X4.
Well, most people say the Double X was a better car than the Triple X, even after the years.
If you're racing outdoors, I don't think you could really touch the Double X4 there for the end of the 90, period. But anyway, when that car came up, and I think you had to get on the pre-order list on the JConcepts website. I would check that thing, I swear, daily after work. Who's on, who's signing up, or who paid for it. And I'm telling you what, I did not have $500 to put down on it in 03 at like 23, living on my own, No way I had that money in 03. I put my name on the list. I had to turn it down when it came around. There was no
Oh, man.
That was a foolish move in 03. For me to buy that car. And then just a short time later at the next Worlds was 05, when they changed the car for the Worlds edition. Here I am a couple years older, probably only 5% less broke than I was 2 years before. But I'm telling you what, when that car, you didn't have to get it only by the pre-order, because I remember I was in between doing paperwork at my job at the time at night, and I looked up on Stormer Hobbies. They had one in sight, and I whipped out that first credit card I ever had as a young adult. all that money on there, plus whatever else I needed to get that car rolling. And dude, I had to have it. Like, it was such a change from, like, I hadn't ran or even owned a 4-wheel since like a Schumacher from '96. I ran it for a year or two. And man, like, that car was just different. I ran Associated everything else. Here's this car, basically, as close as you can get to like the Associated 4-wheel or whatever you wanted to call it. But you had something to run against the Losi guys because they were clowning on you at any race that anybody ran 4-wheel, which wasn't as common as it is now. Like, 4-wheel was big race only, I would say, for the most part, in most people. And I mean, most of the time back in the brush days, you weren't making a whole day without pulling your motor out of no 4-wheel, which is no easy task back then. Pulling your motor out, cutting it, putting brushes on it, cramming it back in this 4-wheel that is nowhere near like work, and keeping that thing going, plus charging your batteries. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So you're gonna run your BJ4 in the revival class. You've sent me pictures. I think that car, the one that you have now, didn't it actually come from Reichert from the Botnats? Isn't that where we kind of sourced that thing from years ago? Or
yes, that he was when he sold it, and I got to strip that down to every screw and rebuild it on up.
Yeah.
You're making me regret right now.
Yeah, I know.
I sold the magazine World's Car here recently, and
well, like I said, I have been looking for a long time to find a BJ4, and I finally, I was talking to a lot of people, finally found one. I'm not going to say what I paid for this because it's somewhat sinful, but it was a car that I had to have in my collection, and I'm very proud. And Jason, when you were at the Clash and you took that picture with the car, it made everything that I did with Chris Norlock and give me the decals and hook me up with the paint to make this thing legitimate. It just made it all worthwhile. So, Jason, why don't you spend a few moments talking about, I know that car is so special to you. Why don't you just talk about, whatever you want to talk about with that car, maybe how it came to fruition and that iconic picture of you in the apartment, stacking all the bodies and putting all the boxes together. I mean, it's just pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I transitioned from being a pro racer. I got into the designing part of things, and that was kind of my thing. I was able to race and drive the cars at a high level, but I also was familiar with how to design products, and sort of I'm probably more like an industrial designer than an engineer. But yeah, I got very good with
There it is.
Got good with CAD work. And so when I moved back to Florida, and because I lived in California for 2 years, and we had a Worlds out there and this and that. I worked out there and went to school. When I went back to Florida, it wasn't long. They were going to have the 2003 Worlds at Minreg, which was a track in it's not in Clearwater. It was near Clearwater. I can't remember the name of the city off the top of my head right now. But my friend, Brad Rayls, who, I raced with throughout the 90s in Florida, he was like, he goes, I heard the Worlds is going to be, in Florida over here, and I'd like to, run in the Worlds. I'm like, yeah, just, send in your resume, whatever you can run. And then he was like, well, I also kind of want to make my own 4-wheel drive car for the race. And I'm just like, well, the race is kind of close. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is going to have to happen really fast. And I'm like, so what do you got done? What's finished? He's like, well, nothing. He's like, I have some ideas. I started, he was doing some 2D drawing with AutoCAD. He had like a top view of what the front bulkhead would look like. And so I told him, I said, well, I'm obviously going to be running the Worlds in 2-wheel drive. I have a Yokomo deal if I need one from Mike Reedy. Said I could get back with Yokomo because I'd ran for Yokomo once, and And but so Reedy had already said if I needed to run a Yokomo, you get the Yokomo set up for me. But after talking to Brad, I was like, well, you know what? If you want to make this car and you want to make this happen, then let's make it happen. And with my experience with solid modeling and then his engineering experience, and he was a top racer as well. He won 4-wheel drive at the Roar Nationals in '95. He loved 4-wheel drive. Like for me, I was like a 2-wheel and a mod truck guy, but I would say if anything, he probably got me into liking 4-wheel when we got into this project, because during my era, it was really a truck. Truck was the big thing, and 2-wheel drive. But so anyway, I told him, I said, well, if we want to do this, let's get together. I can use my experience. You can use your experience. We'll try to put this car down in the computer and then see what we can do. I had some contacts in the industry with Mike Mellon was a friend of mine who worked he works at Horizon now, but back then he worked at a company called Lamb Components, and he worked with also John Anderson, who John Anderson used to be at Team Losi. He used to be basically their machinist, their Curtis Husting, if you will, of Team Losi, but he worked at Lamb Components and with Mike Mellon during that time. So while we were designing this car, we kind of pulled an all-nighter, got it kind of roughed out, and based off of what Brad was wanting to do, and then based off of what I saw while we were working on it, he went back home to go back to work because he was an engineer at another job, and I would kind of send him pictures like, all right, hey, I ran into this problem. We're gonna have to change this and tweak that and update this or change that. And so along the way, I started sending these files to Mike Mellon and was like, hey, can you guys make this for us in these parts? And he was just kind of like, yeah, I think we can get this done. John Anderson was, I think, made these parts for us. We got the carbon fiber routed from one. We got the machine parts from them. We, there was a lot of outfitted associated parts on the car. I made the body for it. And so all these things had to kind of come together in a really, really short time frame. I mean, we're talking about like just weeks. And when we got this car done, or we got the parts in, the race was coming up. So, and Brad happened to live down there close to where the world was being held. And so I'm like, you know what? I said, I'm going to bring all my stuff down. I'll stay with you. We'll build these cars together. We have all the parts now. And it was a long build because we had all these parts, of course, but then the work was modifying all the associated parts that we needed to modify to put everything together. So this was a several day build. Each of us I was working on one, Brad was working on his, and, if we'd come up with a problem or an issue, we'd help each other, or, if Brad was better at something, than I was, he would work on mine. And then if I was a little better at something else, I would work on it for him. And I finished building mine. I wasn't even, we didn't attend the opening ceremonies at the Worlds because we were building the cars. So
Wow.
we finished building the car, and my B4 was ready to go. It was dialed, ready to go. So I did have the new Illusion body. Our first body was on it. That was all painted by Jim Myers. He painted the BJ4 bodies. And so my B4 stuff was ready to go. Tires were ready, ready to hit the track, but this 4-wheel wasn't. We skipped opening ceremonies. I don't even know what it looked like. And I got my car done, got the body cut out, went out on the street, drove it up and down the street at Brad's house. And I was like, all right, it goes, let's bring it to the world. So that's what we did is
Wow.
There we go.
Practice was the next day, and yeah, I ran it in the first practice session. Brad didn't make the first practice session; he was still building, but yeah, I got to run, and I think he showed up to watch me run, and yeah, I mean, I was, I think I was in the top 10 the very first practice run. And they keep track of your times, and I think I was in the top 10 the first time I ever drove the car around the track, and that's pretty much where I stayed the entire qualifying with the car. And then in the 2-wheel drive classes, I made the A main there. I think I qualified 5th, and in 4-wheel I was at the top of the B. It'd have been nice to make the main, but we were missing just a little bit with the way the track was working, and obviously 0 testing. But the car was phenomenal, and it was kind of making its way on the internet. And we didn't really even know we were going to make it at the time. Brad wanted to make it for the race. We got that done, and I think we just felt like we were doing well just by getting out there and being in the race. And obviously it went really well, and the drivers saw the connection with the parts as Adam mentioned, to the associated car, and immediately everybody kind of wanted one. So we tried to figure out a way to get there. It took a little while we had that pre-order list, and it was pretty epic pre-order list, and we had a lot of fun with it. It was a ton of work working on that car and trying to get it out, packaging. You just don't think of some of these things, packaging diff balls, 10, 10 diff balls.
I can only imagine.
And thrust balls, the thrust washers. And, you're kind of thinking, to yourself when you're ordering these things, we were getting them from Associated, diff balls and that kind of thing. And, I don't know what you're kind of thinking at the time. Maybe it'll come already packaged, right? Like 10 to a package. Nope, you just get 30,000 diff balls or whatever we got, and it's like, all right. So it's a ton of work, and we had a lot of help. Jim Myers and his family, obviously my wife Allison was there all the time. Brad would come every weekend, and it was a lot of work to get that car out and to start selling it. And then we just had a ton of success with it because we had great drivers driving it. Like I saw JR Mitch just popped up on here, and JR was driving the BJ4, and we had great drivers, and we had Cavallari, Mayfield, and Tebow, and JR, and Ryan Eckert, and Scott Spear, Al Horn had one. We had brought Mark Pavitas to a race to drive one. Greg Hodap drove one. Wow. Scott Brown drove one. Ryan Mayfield.
Leave out Rod Rippey.
Ryan Mayfield drove it, and so, and like you said, the very first 2 customers we had were Rod Rippey and Chris Baumgardner. They were some of our very first customers. And when we finished the car and we got it packaged with the manual, we shipped it straight to Rod Rippey, who they built them, and he won the stock Roar Nationals, I would say a week or 2 after we shipped the first kit. So Rod Rippey, so we were the car was a national champion like 2 weeks after we started selling the first one, thanks to Rod and Chris, who I think got 2nd or 3rd. They kind of dominated. And so yeah, we had this incredible run of success with the original car, but then into the World's Edition, which we made some changes. So it was an absolute great experience doing that.
JR, so your name came up today. I know you can hear me, so I want to just say this now because I meant to message you, but I saw you got a really awesome looking low CXX body painted, and you made a comment that you need a car for it. So if you need a car, you need to hit us up, and we want to see you in March. So let us know what we need to do to make that happen. This
I
race
think he
is going to
told
be
me he's
epic.
coming in
So.
March. Do you not,
Okay.
Jay?
Well, he said on the message that he needed a car still. So if he needs one, we're the guys to contact, and we'll get
Yes.
you in the right place. So,
Get him hooked up.
all right,
Dude.
guys. So this last 15 minutes or so, we got to talk
I
about
just
the
gotta
race.
say, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's Jason, thank you for the stories. I mean, we could probably sit here and talk for the next 10 hours.
Yeah.
But the BJ, man, wow, that's awesome. And what a great name. I know it's not meant to be what it is, but it's pretty
You know, yeah, I think it started at the first Worlds when we had the car. I think that was the idea. Is I think somebody might have suggested it. Maybe Brad remembers it, how it actually that came up, but it came up at the race, and we stuck with it. And actually, David Jor, who owns Avid, he was the guy that created the website rc10b4.com back then.
No.
And he actually did the graphics for the BJ4 logo, and he got us going with the first website and the pre-order list. David Jor created all that, and it looked amazing. I loved the way it all looked, and I was into that part of it. He did a great job with it, and it was something. We were just kind of doing things a little different. We sold the car. It had a video on the internet that we still have on our page, and it looks so bad today, like the quality. I remember back then, people used to email us and say, "Hey, I noticed the car in the video. Maybe you could go up on shock oil." And you watch that video today, and you're like, it just looks like a bunch of fuzz. Like, I don't know, like what this guy was looking at, we did it a different way, and we did it over the internet. We did it with this pre-order list, and we did the bodies too. So it kind of got us going, and man, we won a ton of events with that. That's awesome. That car.
Wow. I think we need to have another event, Jason. We're gonna have to do a Jason 2.0.
Right. I mean, this body would look, this body shape would look pretty sweet on a modern car. Just throwing that out there.
I think he might have one.
Dirk, we need to transition to the race here. Yeah. So Adam, we'll start with you. Me and you have been great friends for a long time. You've supported everything I've done. Obviously, this race is a partnership with many people that I didn't have the vision for this, but it was presented to me, and I was looked at as a potential guy to help make it happen and be a part of this team. And I'm glad that I did. And so, but I the community and there's just been different people talking about their take. What's your, I know you're racing many different classes you signed up, but what's this race mean to you? And what are your thoughts on what you're looking forward to most?
I definitely am looking forward to seeing everybody just race again. A lot of guys that haven't raced and don't keep up on it, just to get out there and watch them race again. Like, either I got this watching the AE videos back in the day, or, every time you open up, whatever, look for race results, you see all the names. Because even though, like in the 90s, I did not get to travel anywhere but basically surrounding states to Indiana, is as far as I went for a very long time. And so to get to see those guys race and race each other, and maybe I'll get to race a few of them, just pure fun. I mean, and getting to race the cars that we were running then for the most part, that's going to be a lot of fun. So
I know we've talked a lot over the years about your idols growing up. Who's the one or two names of your favorite RC legends as a boyhood idol?
Man. Well, coming up in there, I would always see Pavidas's cars, and everybody gravitate towards them. But I mean, in all fairness, he was winning a lot of races in the early days, and you get these several other guys. Man, I mean, Masami would be great. But I think pretty much world known, and that would be cool to see him. But so far on our entry list, I think it's going to be a very good time. A lot of people are going to be sharing a lot of stories, a lot of good community, probably what I'd say.
Hey, Adam, I want you to go ahead. We haven't made it yet. I know I sent you a text last night at about 11 p.m. You want to let it slip, Drew? Let the man announce his Mr. Fanboy over here.
Yeah. So you just said who your favorite boyhood idol was. You want to go ahead and announce what you know?
So I got a text confirming from Dirk that Mark Pavita will be joining us at the Vintage Class of Champions.
Yeah.
What a
way. Yeah. What a way to, I mean, like I said, we got a confirmed card in the works and it'll be posted tomorrow, but Jason's on this call. He's the guy that we went to and said, we want you to be our title sponsor. You're the guy. And he embraced us from the start. And what a way to announce, Joel was obviously our backbone from the very beginning. I know Joel, I sent him the link. He's listening tonight. He listened to our podcast on Monday too, Dirk, just so you know, while he built his Ultima that he's bringing to the race to compete. So there you go, people. But yeah. And Adam, I know you're working behind the scenes with us on some projects related to Mark. And so there you go. There you go, world. Adam's boyhood idol, Mark Pavitas, is a confirmed legend and will be announced officially tomorrow.
I say this kind of often, but I really believe that Mark Pavitas is one of, if not the best RC driver of all time, because now everyone initially thinks I'm nuts because Masami's the obvious choice with all the world titles. And you know what? If you want to say it's Masami, I'm perfectly fine with it. But what I remember about Mark and his racing in those days is he raced 2-wheel, 4-wheel, truck, touring car, pan cars, 8 scale. He ran all those classes, and I was one of the guys to beat in all those different classes, and he worked on all the cars himself. And I think that, to me, that's what made him very, very good and valuable, because just the versatility. I mean, and obviously everybody loves Brian Kinwald. I do too. But Mark was more versatile than Brian Kinwald was as a driver. Brian was a winning juggernaut in 10 scale off-road, but especially 2-wheel buggy. That was really his best class. But Mark was so amazing with all these other cars, and he won with all of them, and did all the wrenching. And so I really thought his skills as a racer, although I think Kinwald was maybe more of a diehard. He was the guy that worked a little more tirelessly than everybody and had these great out of the box things he would do for racing. But to me, Mark's talent, the way his cars looked to me all the time, was really, really a great representative of a way a team associated car should look on the track. And I think a lot of people agreed during that time period. And it's certainly a fabulous addition to the race. And I think that Associated is also behind him coming and being a big part of it. And I think that that was a great pick on their part, because if you obviously you want Kinwald too, but you can't have Kinwald.
Right.
The best would be to put Kinwald and Mark together. But Mark he'll carry it for both. You know what I mean? Because those guys were so close and so close as competitors. So I think that'll be a great addition to the race. And then obviously you have Matt Francis, who was right there with those guys in that generation. So you really kind of have this mean trifecta of these guys that I think really kind of had, I'm not going to say a stranglehold, but they had a pretty good stranglehold on that era.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, Mark, I'm sure you'll listen to this podcast. Dirk, thank you for all you did to get with Mark and to communicate and enlighten us on all that. And, Mark, between Dirk and Jason and Kirby and Adam and I, and even the Henleys, you got a great supporting cast along with AE to make this an amazing event. And Dirk, I mean, you can go ahead and speak on it. I know how excited you are about Mark, and I want you to be the guy
Yeah,
that
I mean,
says it.
I'm very, I missed the '90s, and I hate it that I missed it. But Mark, Francis, all these guys from the '90s. I want to see them there, and be able to spend some time with them. And of course, having Curtis there, to me, having Eustace there, to me, those were two of the original engineers of RC. And I think Jason would kind of back that up. But it's 9 years ago, I would say, and I really wanted to have a race, and Mike Kirby and I started talking about it, and I started talking to Jason about it probably back then as well. To have a reunion, man, to get Jason, what you were saying earlier about, I wish the legends or the champions of today could spend time with the legends of yesterday. That was my vision, and I don't know that we're going to pull the second half off. Just because of dates and everything else, it's very hard to get the champs, because a lot of them, like you said, Jason, they're more versatile now than they were back then, because they're racing A scale and they're racing 10th. But it was a vision to get everybody together. And, I remember the first time, Drew, that you and Adam invited me to PT Hobbies. It's back when I was racing almost every weekend and trying to build vintage racing, and you were trying to build vintage racing. And, and I kind of went off the face of the earth for a little bit when I moved to Texas. But man, to have this race, I'm just sitting here and I'm having chills, and I'm thinking it's kind of like, going to be my second child, creating this race. And there's a lot of people working very hard to make this happen. And I have a great relationship with Associated, and being able to pull this off for Pavitas. And I'm really, really, really hoping Jay and I talk, Jay Halsey and I talk Friday, or what is tomorrow? Tomorrow's Friday. So Jay Halsey and I will talk tomorrow, and we're going to try to finalize him coming as well. But this is special, man. It really is. And couldn't have a better partner than you, Drew, and the Henleys and the Kirbys, and having Jason get on board. And I'm telling you, Jason, he's got to have confidence in the people that are doing a race like this to support it. And it means a lot to us, Jason, that you've done that. So,
Well, and I think, Jason and I and Dirk and Adam, we were on this chat talking about our link tonight, and Jason hit it. He just said that this event is unique. It is something that's refreshing. It's something that's out of the normal, especially for the day and age that we are. And it's doing it's bridging a gap of a lot of different communities onto an evolving, product of RC racing that we just have to kind of embrace. And so, Jason, you're going to be in the Legends Invite class. I know initially you talked about an RC10. I mean, and today you kind of mentioned another concept, but I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are about being on the stand with some of these guys and your excitement level for that.
Well, it's different because I think it's kind of like in a sense, I kind of think about like these when you see these reunions, like if you're like an NBA championship team or something that has like a reunion like during a game type of thing. And I don't know that anybody wants to see them play basketball at the reunion. You know what I mean?
Don't mess it up, Jason.
Yeah, there we go.
So it's a little bit different because you're not going to get that top-notch performance, I think, that that everybody really wants. And I think ultimately it's hard because you have to separate that what the event is supposed to be for, and then trying to kind of appease yourself of driving the car around the track, because let me tell you, once you put Mark Pavidis and Greg Hodap and Brian Dunbar and you know, all these guys together on the driver's stand, it kind of changes a little bit, you know, like some of those feelings will kind of come back for everybody. And I think, and you got guys that are really brushed up in the skills, like Adam. He's got some time behind the wheel. I mean, we saw Al Horn he sent me 30 photos of all of his cars last night. And because he was having a blast going through all of his, he's not throwing anything away. And Al is super sharp with his driving. He's a phenomenal driver and racer at this point. And so you're going to have people at very different ends of the spectrum. You know, Matt Francis probably hasn't driven a car in, you know, 15 years and, you know, to some extent. So, you know, and you'll see these guys will have the skills in this, but it's not their car either, right? Like, it's not their radio. It's not their car. They're not fully engaged. So it's going to be hard to, I think, for them to be able to say, okay, am I going around the track or am I racing? Like, you know, so that's the hardest part about doing this kind of stuff is your image in your head is different than maybe what the outcome would look like when you're driving. And so it's disconnecting it a little bit and just saying, you know what, I want to drive around the track. I want the car to look cool. I mean, that's my goal is, you know, and I have more experience than a lot of these guys that haven't ran in a long time, but I don't have near the track time, you know, that Adam and Al Horn and these guys. But so my vision is I want a nice looking car. I want to have some new products that maybe we haven't seen before it. And I want some good photos of it. And that's what I'm kind of doing it for. And then what it is what it is. And if I'm standing next to Mark or Matt Francis and they beat me again, I'm going to throw them over the driver's stand.
I love all the Jason. That's great perspectives coming from
Jason. We're not letting Adam in this race, just so you know.
Yeah. Adam's not in it, unfortunately.
He should be.
He should be
old enough.
Can we just say legend? I mean, he's got the shirt, man. Look at that thing.
Well, I will say that you know, right behind me, you can see this is my world shrine. You know, I'm a huge world's advocate. Adam Rayls was so kind to put my DBR logo on his World's cars a couple of years ago at Hobby Action. So he gave me his bodies. I've got the wheels up there in the case there. And then I got canvas prints of Justin Green, JConcepts driver, and good friend. They both were rocking out the DBR logos on four-wheel drives. And so I got to be a part of the world, even though I've never been to one or invited to one. So thank you, Adam. And I know Justin was commenting on it, but yeah, I mean, Jason, you hit it on the head. I mean, this race is going to be about fun. It's going to be about, there's going to be on-track parts of it, but even Eustace is bringing a long-awaited RC10 prototype legend four-wheel drive car that he's just going to wheel around the track, and he wants to just make laps, and he wants to showcase that car. And I know some other cars that are going to be in the building, like Francis is bringing his XXX as it rolled off the track in 01 at the Worlds.
Yeah.
And I know of some other cars that are going to be there that I've heard, and I won't say what they are, but I've heard that they are some of the most legendary cars that have ever hit RC's history, and they might be in that building together on the same day. So this race is about seeing things, but also we've got the mod broadcast. It's going to be broadcasting this event worldwide. And so maybe it's one last chance for you know, all viewerships of modern racing and vintage racing and the guys that collect these replicas that can't make it to the race to see their favorite boyhood idols like Pavidis and Adam. I mean, he gets to see it firsthand with his eyes, but maybe there's going to be something more to it long term and lasting as well. And I think that's what Dirk's vision is and Kirby's vision is with this thing as well. So
yeah, I don't know that we'll ever pull this off again. I really don't. You know, it's been a lot of effort, and maybe everybody has so much fun they want to do this yearly until the end of time. That would make us all very, very happy.
Yeah.
And
I think the goal should be you have to do it until Masami comes.
Yes,
Correct.
yes. I think we may see that, Jason. Can't really talk a whole lot about it yet, but
I think with the list you have going on now, I was almost hoping that he would almost have to be guilted into coming because he'd be the only one not here.
We still have 2 months, you know, and look, we have tried and we have done a lot of things to communicate with him, and he's well aware of this race. There's a lot of barriers there that everybody understands. So, you know, it's challenging, but I know a lot of people have also talked about another infamous name in the world, and that is you know, Losi, and we're talking, you know, we're trying to make this work. It's, you know, there's a few guys that just can't make it because of other obligations or some other barriers, but I promise you, when I sat across the table from Jill Johnson, and I kicked off this, you know, conversation after Kirby and Dirk presented to me, and I said, Joel, we want you to be our backbone. Can you make it? And he looked me in the eye and said, I'll be there. And maybe we make this a yearly thing. I don't know. But he also said that even if the guys can't come, just make sure that they're aware of it. And we have done everything we can to make sure that everybody is aware of it.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
there's no doubt.
I mean, yeah, Joel obviously is just a guy that represents multiple eras. You know, I think some of us are kind of locked into one era or another, but Joel is, you know, he raced in many of the golden eras. You know, if there was a golden era when it started in the, you know, late 70s, early, you know, 80s, and then into the 90s, you know, he was pretty golden through that whole time period. So, and he's a guy that still is an amazing driver today. I mean, he races some eight scale on road.
He does.
Just unbelievable racer, and you'll see that with all these guys. You know, if they have a car that meets up to their satisfaction, it won't be long, and they'll be going around pretty damn well. Probably to the point where they're just like, you know, it gets probably a little like, I'm going for the win. You know, some of these guys will be going for the win. So we got our picture.
Yeah, there's a picture.
Yeah, Curtis sent me this picture today. I'd already seen it last night. So hopefully this is what's to come. But I'm going to tell you this. I mean, we've got, I mean, what, 15 so far, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, with 13 confirmed. We've also got Adam on that list. We've got Matt Olson on that list, and Mark Pavidis now got added. So, yeah, I mean,
I have some predictions about the more people that get added to the Legends class. It's gonna up the stakes. So as soon as they start, a few of them, when they start seeing each other on the track, and if their stuff is feeling good, it's gonna get very competitive. I think really quick in a good way. I think just announcing that Mark is coming, Dunbar is already probably committing an extra 10 hours of practice somewhere along the line between now and then. Just for that alone.
Yeah, I mean, JConcepts talked about it. Jason and I and Dirk and Adam and I were all talking about today. Like we are really considering having breakup A mains for the Legends and doing a Reedy style kind of format for just them. So it sounds like something that I talked to Angie and Eddie about today. They want to try to pull it off. I know Jimmy is capable on the mic and on the screen of hitting back between the two race formats to make it work. So we're working on some, as this has evolved, we have to evolve too, just like vintage racing has to evolve. You know, I know there's a lot of people talking about what it could be or what it should be, but we got to evolve, and we're doing it on the fly here too. So,
yeah, I really want to talk about that a little tonight, but I already said we're way past our deal. I mean, I'm good to go, but I don't want to keep anybody longer if they got obligations.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to wrap it up. Man, this last 20 minutes was really impactful, and I'm sure we're going to blow the internet up tonight about this. I'm even scared to see my phone. The messages are completely lined up across the top of the screen right now. Yep. So, and Al Horn's talking in Reedy format would be awesome. Well, I think that's probably going to happen because we can't, you know, this event was built to protect the Legends and the invite class so that they could compete amongst each other in a relatively fair format. of each other and not have, young guns coming in and competing with them. But at the same time, we also want to separate it out to where, it's like prestigious for all of them together. Dunbar is setting up his bed at the track right now. Of course he is. So yeah, I mean, this was a great
Kenwold used to
ending.
have a bed at a track, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I think Dunbar lives at Hoosier. I mean, I've got 3 setups from him this week on the Wheeler already, and I haven't even put the first one on. So I'll be there tomorrow, Dunbar, testing with you, buddy. So he's excited. I guess to say how excited all the legends are amongst each other, Joel's been texting me tonight. Dunbar actually found out about Pavitas last night late. Dunbar's one of my close buddies too, like Adam is, and all you guys. And I guess he ran into Hoosier Hobby to test today, and as he walked past the booth, the glass case, he said, "Did you guys hear about Pavitas?" So Angie and Eddie, of course, already knew, but yeah, it's going to be pretty epic. These legends as a whole are just ecstatic about being together with each other, and look at the memories. We even sent a list to Eustace to kind of work on some tool thoughts, and we sent him the list, and he just was blown away by the names that were on that list. So this event's going to be epic, guys. I mean, the entries are really they're creeping up. I think we're at 220 as we came on this call tonight. It's probably going to increase more. So
yeah, I'm telling you, it's always tough to get that first 200. Then all your locals start signing up. Then all the other people that may have been on the fence start signing up.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if we're not in the 340 range by the end of this weekend. So if you're having second thoughts, get in there and get it. If you have questions, reach out to me, reach out to Drew. Drew, thank you for all the setup help. Here's the deal. One thing that's going on in the background that y'all may not realize is Drew, Dunbar, Adam, Robert Stevens, they're all working on these cars for these legends and setting them up to a track that they know very, very well. And think about that. You're gonna kind of walk in. These legends are gonna be able to pick up a radio, and although they may not have driven a car in forever, they're gonna have a car that's gonna be set up, right? And don't get me wrong, every driver is a little different. But walking in and having a set up car and ready to roll. Thank you guys for doing that, Drew. That's what's making this exceptional is the stuff that's really going on in the background to make them feel welcome. And
and we want everybody to be on the same level field. I mean, one of the biggest impactful things to me besides Adam Rayls has been, Brian Dunbar sending me setups so that when I walk into Hoosier, I mean, it's an intimidating place for sure. But when you have a right setup that works there, and you walk in knowing that you've got that, your confidence is sky high, and that's how I've been able to, win some of these mains and podium there now. And I'm not the fastest driver. I'm ultra consistent, but I've never beat Adam Rayls to date. I keep waiting for him to break something, but it hasn't happened. And
I'm not beating one way or the other.
So I posted a block of about 9 different platforms of setups that I had access to, and people have added on to those. I keep posting that whole link, and then I put a really cool tire video up and talked about all the JConcepts tires and how our testings went with the thins versus the thicks, and like Adam said, the glued sidewalls, and so stock foams. And it's not overly difficult to get your tires ready. You work with those setups that we've posted, and you're going to be in the ball game. I promise. Just get there, tweak a couple of things on your driving style, tweak your radio, tweak your springs, and you are going to be up to speed. And don't worry. Eddie's going to make such an amazing layout that's going to allow everybody to be successful. It's going to have everybody to have fun with these cars and do fun elevations and twisty turns and not have a bunch of big jumps to where everybody's going to be breaking parts. It's going to be more simplistic, but flowing and very fun. So it's all going to play out. So get signed up and get to this race and experience it with everybody.
To answer Caesar's question, the race is going to be held at Hoosier RC Hobbyplex. You can look it up. You can also go to the JConcepts Vintage Clash of Champions, the Old School RC Reunion link. It's posted as an event. It's going to be high grip. Maybe we can just have a session on tires one night, Jason. I know we're all busy, and you're probably busier than most of us, but We can definitely.
we
And
can do
Drew's
it.
posted a video of it, so
We can do it.
yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
gentlemen.
I mean, like I said, I'm excited. I'm glad we were able to do this, and yeah, I'd like to, we'd do something again and try to get this, this race rocking, make it the biggest we can make it, and I think it should something that should continue year after year. Like you said, having topping the first one. Who knows if you can do that? But the idea is to keep this stuff going. If these vintage cars keep rolling out, and all of us keep getting older, it's just going to seem cooler all the time.
Right.
Probably. So,
Yeah.
We'll get
Love
Masami
it.
and put our whole band together out there, and
Man,
it's
that would
going to
be
be
awesome.
it's going to be epic fun, and I think that everyone's going to want to either be there or watch it online.
That's right.
Love it.
I just want to say, guys, I haven't not seen this before, even close. Over 1.5 thousand views already.
Wow.
Pretty
Why
good.
it's still live. That's just incredible. And that's just off my main page platform. It's not from every single place. So great work, y'all. Thank
I knew
you
this
all
one.
for doing this.
I knew this one was going to be amazing. I think we made it even more special just by the way we ended the last 30 minutes. That was not totally expected, but it just organically happened as these always do. And thank you all, Adam. Thank you. Look forward to working with you more on some stuff. And
Absolutely.
yeah, let's keep it rolling, guys.
I'd say, like, to the guys in the vintage community, reach out if you're worried about tires, interested in tires. I think everybody's going to be pleasantly surprised with the grip, the ease of use. Look at that. Is that the 99 car?
Oh my goodness. I wish I could just highlight him.
Look, does that have the rear tower on it? The carbon rear tower?
I think this actually was the production one by now.
Yeah.
Because I think I ran it at the Reedy race after that. But yeah, it's got it's got the chassis with the slots in.
Yeah. Are you gonna bring it, Jason? Or are you gonna bring the RC10?
Oh no, I'm gonna run some version of a RC10.
Okay.
Actually, I got gonna run some kind of tub car for sure. I just think it just screams vintage to me. So
yeah.
But yeah, this is my B3. So I told Adam.
I was hoping you were gonna run the B3, honestly, but
yeah,
I may just have to build a team car right out of the box and run it.
Well, Justin Green has signed up officially with the World's Car, and that's his baby. And he almost beat Dunbar last year at the Vintage Invitational at Bills. And he's put every B2 and B3 on notice by the classic class that he will make some noise with his World's Car. So there you go, Pan Car boys. Jason's running one, Justin's running one. They can compete with the right.
It's fast.
They can
World's
compete.
car is still good on every track.
I think it's the best car ever made. I'm just going to be honest.
How about I thought Justin Green might run his tank. He's not going to run the tank.
Oh yeah, could be. There you go, Justin. Bring the tank. Awesome.
I want to know what's going to get Ruona from managing expectations to I need to win a race or two this weekend.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard to put yourself in that position, but yeah, once you start running and you start driving, you always want to do as well as you can. So, I'll be more excited when I have my car that I'm going to race, and I'm excited the way it's going to turn out. By the time we can put the new wheels on it, I got some fresh bodies here, and we get everything kind of ready to go, and then I'll kind of start to get a little pumped up about how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, Jason, when are the Pioneer wheels due to the retail level?
Well, we first got the ones for the modern cars, which I got this car over here. First we got these for the modern car, which these are close. Probably by the time the race is there, we should be selling our first modern versions, and then
awesome.
We're well underway for the vintage ones. I have enough for the RC10 that I should be able to run them at the race. So
awesome.
I'm pretty
I'm
excited.
excited.
About that.
I'm really excited about those. My son is excited too. He saw them and he's like, "Dad, I want those wheels on my car all the time." So, and Jeff Reddy had him at the last series race, kind of walking around showing everybody, and I was just like mind blown. So, I'm really excited to start buying those things.
Yeah, he's my guy. Jeff Reddy, he's going to be there. He's signed up, and he's
Awesome.
vintage too, but he's modern right now. He's been modern racing, but
So
he'll be my pick guy.
Cool.
Jason, what do we got to do to get him to race a vintage car there, though?
But yeah, I think he's starting to warm up to the idea.
Okay, I would love it. I tried to convince him. I'm hoping you can continue. Super nice guy, by the way. Thanks for letting me spend a little time with him.
It's not going to take much for him. If he sees a nice one on eBay or something, it's done, I think. I actually have his B2. He gave me his old B2. And I told him, I'm like, well, if you want your B2 back, you could race that, but it'd be best to probably keep that one separate that he ran in the 90s, and maybe he could scoop up a new one.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for everything. I'm good to sign off, but this is awesome, and let's do it again soon. And Jeff, I'll see you this weekend. We'll talk vintage at Hoosier. Adam, I'll see you next Wednesday because I got a car to deliver to you that's getting picked up tomorrow. And we'll keep cranking. There's Kirby. There he is. Kirby, we've been talking about
send you a B7.
Oh yeah, you got to send me the B7 too.
I'm getting all kinds of cars sent to me here. So
Okay.
Yeah, I got a lot of work.
Thank you all again. I do want to thank our sponsors, title sponsor JConcepts, our platinum sponsors MIP, Team Associated, Cal RC, our founding fathers, Mike Kirby, Amberly Kirby, fathers and mothers, Drew Boyd, the man, Angie and Eddie Henley, myself, and Old School RC. We thank you guys. We hope to see you at the event. And if you haven't signed up, get her done. Peace out, everybody. Enjoy this lovely exit video.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Keep an eye out for those waffles, too. They're coming.
Thank you, Dirk.
Thank you, sir.